Let's imagine the Roman Republic as a vast family business that had grown into the biggest company on earth. Its rulebook had been written when it owned a single shop, but now it controlled factories, ports, farms, and cities across an entire continent. The board of directors, the Senate, spent most of its time protecting its own privileges, while younger executives looked for ways to break into the inner circle. Born in 100 BC, Julius Caesar inherited one of the company's oldest surnames, but with an almost empty bank account. As a teenager, he seemed destined for a comfortable career at headquarters, and he was selected for one of the company's most prestigious executive training programs, the High Priesthood of Jupiter. He then strengthened his connections by marrying Cornelia, the daughter of one of the firm's most powerful directors. But then the company was taken over. A ruthless new chairman named Sulla purged the old management and demanded that every remaining executive prove their loyalty. Caesar was ordered to divorce Cornelia and abandon the family that had brought him into the business, but he refused. Rather than quietly obeying, Caesar disappeared from headquarters altogether, spending months on the run while friends negotiated for his survival. When the old chairman died, Caesar returned with a different strategy. Since he couldn't buy control of the company outright, he invested in something just as valuable, his reputation. He borrowed enormous amounts of money to host extravagant company events, remembered people's names, solved their problems, delivered brilliant presentations in the boardroom, and became the executive everyone was talking about. Every favor he did was another share of influence, and every speech another investment in his personal brand. Yet as he climbed the corporate ladder, he looked across the room at the truly powerful men and realized he still was only a rising manager. He had prestige but not enough profit, popularity but not enough authority. It was like owning a large stake in the company but not enough shares to outvote the board. So instead of trying to stage a hostile takeover alone, Caesar proposed a merger. He partnered with the company's richest investor Crassus, who supplied the capital, and its most celebrated operations manager Pompey, who brought prestige and loyal employees. But Caesar contributed what neither possessed: extraordinary political skill and the ability to align everyone's interests. Individually, they had been blocked by the board, but together they controlled enough votes, money, and influence to run the company from behind the scenes. And the merger worked. With the backing of the triumvirate, Caesar was elected consul in 59 BC. His fellow consul Bibulus tried to block much of his agenda, but Caesar largely outmaneuvered him. Yet Caesar knew that once his year in office ended, his political enemies would almost certainly drag him into court. So he needed to keep his imperium, the legal authority and protection that came with holding high office. So the triumvirate secured him command of the Republic's struggling northern province, Gaul, or modern-day France. Most executives would have treated it as a routine management posting, but Caesar saw something very different. The command not only protected him from prosecution while he remained in office, but it gave him a division of the company that answered directly to him, so he treated it like a startup. Over the next decade, he transformed that neglected branch into the company's greatest success story. Every competitor he acquired expanded the business, every victory increased revenue, and every successful project earned the loyalty of thousands of employees who no longer saw themselves as working for Rome, but working for Caesar himself. And by the time annual reports reached headquarters, one thing had become obvious. The branch manager had become more valuable than the board itself. And that was when the directors became nervous. So they summoned Caesar back to headquarters, but attached one condition: resign before you walk in, give up your staff, hand over your authority, and return as an ordinary executive. Caesar looked at the proposal and recognized it for what it was. He hadn't spent 10 years building the company's most successful division just to surrender it to the people who had doubted him from the beginning. So instead of returning as an employee, he arrived as a competitor. Crossing the Rubicon was the moment he walked into headquarters and announced that the board no longer controlled the company. The directors fled, former allies switched sides, departments turned against one another, and the corporation descended into a full-scale internal power struggle. One of the board's senior directors, Pompey, escaped overseas to Egypt, and Caesar followed. But Egypt turned out to be just another family business tearing itself apart. Two heirs, Cleopatra and her brother Ptolemy, were fighting over who should inherit the company. Caesar backed Cleopatra, and together they removed her rivals, restored her as chief executive, and formed a partnership that was political, financial, and personal. For a brief moment, it looked as though Caesar wasn't simply trying to run Rome anymore. He was imagining a multinational enterprise stretching across the Mediterranean. When he finally returned to headquarters, he didn't sack the board or burn down the company. Instead, he modernized outdated systems, reorganized departments, expanded management, settled retired employees with new opportunities, introduced a new calendar that the entire business would follow, and pushed through reforms that previous executives had talked about for decades but never delivered. The company had never been more efficient, but it had also never depended so completely on one person. Eventually, the remaining directors stopped asking whether Caesar was doing a good job, but started asking whether there would still be a board after he was gone. And when Caesar accepted the title of dictator for life, many concluded that the takeover was complete. If they wanted the company back, they believed they only had one option: remove the CEO. So they invited Caesar to one final board meeting. He walked into the room expecting another day of business, but never walked out. The directors who killed Caesar believed they had saved the company. Instead, they exposed its greatest weakness. The business had grown into a global corporation, but it was still being managed as though it were a family firm. And Julius Caesar didn't create that contradiction. He simply forced everyone to confront it. And after his assassination, the board still met, the company handbook remained on the shelf, and the company logo never changed. But from that moment on, everyone understood that the old business model no longer worked. The Republic would survive on paper for a few more years, but the company Caesar had inherited was gone forever.